Hey guys, your skeptical gunsmith here at Four Peaks Tactical. Here is part 3 of the Smith & Wesson FPC trigger job. Just to recap what we did here, disassembled the FPC, the 9mm PCC by Smith & Wesson, to improve upon the trigger. And what we did is we replaced the hammer spring. The hammer spring in the FPC, this is the stock one, it's fairly stout. It's about 5 coils wide. This hammer spring, which is from these guys, it's part of the reduced power spring kit, is a little bit lighter. It's about 4 coils and usually takes about 2.5 pounds of trigger pull out of an AR-15, and it actually helps improve the trigger pull in the FPC as well. All you have to do is take the hammer spring, which is basically an AR-15 hammer spring, and cut the legs off of it here to fit into this little hammer chassis. So now we'll reassemble it and give it a try and see how we did. First part of reassembling this, you kind of do a front to back approach. So we'll take the safety, the little red washer goes on the left side, so we'll slide that in. Then we'll take our trigger and transfer bar. We'll kind of I've already lubed the side of it with some lube because again, we polished that in the second part. It slides into this little channel here, like so. Goes under the safety. You can kind of see I'm holding the safety. It goes in just like that, obviously where the trigger needs to go. And the trick in getting this in is to get that little spring. Whoops, I don't think I got that in the right spot. There we go. The trick in getting this in the right spot is this spring right here. And you can kind of try to do it with your fingernail. Basically, that spring has got to go into the little groove below it. Easiest to take something like this little pick here, lift it up just a little bit, slide that spring back as far as you can, push it down into the spot, and there it is. So that little spring is now fully captured in its little groove, and the trigger's in the right spot, and your safety is still where we want it to be, and it's captured by that little hook. So now we're in good shape. Next, we will assemble, or reassemble, I should say, the little hammer chassis. It's in the cocked position. Remember, that's our sear engagement. We'll replace that little spring that goes right here. Little arm goes right here. Put that into place. Whoop. It's got to go, that little hook, that little foot has got to go under the spring, so you got to kind of catch it just right. There it is. So it's kind of under tension. It rotates, as you can see. Now we have this just how we want it. And the trick, there's a little bit of a trick in putting this into the chassis, in that you kind of have to suspend this arm. I'm going to put a little more lube where I want it, right there, so that it seeps into between the transfer bar and the chassis. We'll bring that up, get some lube on it. Now we want that little pin right here to follow that channel. And then this pin right here has to go into that groove on the frame itself. Lastly, that little arm right here has to engage that arm to trip the sear, so everything has to be in alignment. Kind of rotate it in like this. Get that little pin in the groove and let it slide down. Now it's in. Now we'll take this pin. Now we can put this pin to keep in our little hammer block. Goes in nicely. There we go. Next, this part is a little bit tricky. we're going to have to put what is basically the bolt release. Looks like a slide lock in a pistol. This is going to rest right here, but at the same time, this piece, which is basically your feed ramp for the barrel, and this little collar and spring have to go in front of it along with a second spring. So you kind of have to keep 4 or 5 items in place at the same time. I use a little grease at the base of the spring. Oh, that's a little too much. The grease, we kind of use it like armor's glue. It just keeps the spring in place. That is way too much. But a little grease goes a long way. We will use that to kind of sit that spring there, and the grease will kind of keep it in place, and that works for us. Then we have, the feed ramp and feed ramp chassis along with this little spring and that little collar. That's going to sit right in this position here on top of that spring, like so. Then we're going to use the bolt catch to press against. We're going to use the front of the bolt catch to press against that spring and move it forward so it all drops into place. A couple different ways you could probably do this. This is, I think, the easiest one I've found that allows it to, and it takes a couple times doing it. There it is. And that drops into place fairly easily. It's not perfect, but that's the best way I found to do it. Lastly, we'll put this pin in here. Easiest way to do this one, take a pin from the other side, push it through. Now you have one to follow it. There you go. Use it as a guide. Make sure that's all the way in. I like that. I'm gonna give that a tap just to be sure. Okay. Now we can actually function test it. We can see if everything's working as it should. Keep your thumb over the hammer, pull the trigger. Should release, and it does. Now we cock it again. We can push the safety out, and it doesn't fire. Push the safety back, and we're at firing. So now we've got this just exactly how we want it. Everything's in the right place. Of note, if you wanted to change your mag release, this would be a good, to swap it over for a left-hand shooter. This would be the perfect time to do it. All right. Next, we will start assembling what is in effect the upper receiver, making sure we keep that ejector in the right spot and that it indexes with the notch in the lower receiver. We bring these two together like so. I'll turn it around so you can kind of see where that's going to index. That's the one piece that's going to kind of keep this from going together how we want it to. I got lucky there. It's all lined up. We'll get all these started. We're going to keep them a little loose so we can wedge that just a little bit when we install reinstall the barrel. So we'll get those started. We use our little T8 Torx to get all these started. I'm going to leave those just a little loose. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to put the bolt in. Key in putting the bolt in is that you're putting this bolt, which is basically round, into a round cylinder, and it can rotate this way and that way, which is going to keep it from going all the way forward. So you got to be mindful of the rotation of the bolt as you put it into the what is basically a buffer tube and the receiver. Put a little lube on there. Big fan of keeping things lubricated, guys. Clean your guns, lubricate them. We'll get that started. There we go. Try to keep it as straight as we can. A little tough for us to see here, but I'm going to guide it in. There we go, and it came right through. That's just a function of keeping her straight. Next, sorry, you didn't see that. So next, put the buffer spring in. I'm going to give these just a little bit of another turn, just a little tighter. I don't want anything moving around. I can always back them up a little bit when I go to install those if I need to. All right, next, we want to, got to back that up a little bit because we got to put the pin in. That little pin, I almost dropped that right in the grease. That little pin's going to go in next. Again, we're going to put a little lube in this little slot for it. Sorry, hopefully you can see that. Put a little lube in the slot. We'll drop the pin right in there. That also helps with the alignment for it moving forward. There she goes. This is going to go in front of it, so we got to install this now. I might have just done that backwards. I did. So I temporarily got to pull my pin back out. Because that's got to go in front. Now I can put my pin back in. There we go. Lastly, need these two pieces. You're going to have to keep this hole here aligned with that hole there. Easiest way to do this is to make sure your bolt is all the way forward. A little spring pressure is going to help us out there. That rode the bolt forward. Now we're going to put this down on the workbench, slide it forward, put a little downward pressure, just like so. Find the slot, put it in. Now it's captured. That's all there is to it. So now that we have that done, we can go ahead and install the bolt. Reason I kept this just a little loose is because this, with that little spring, has got to get captured in here. But first we're going to put the barrel in. Try to do this in a way that you guys can see it well. It's basically going to come in just like so. By the way, these are the same, so you don't need to worry about which one goes where. They're identical. Takes a little doing to get her going through. Sorry, trying to keep this in. There it goes. Just takes a little pressure to get that going where you want it to go. We're just going to get this started. I'm going to tap that just a little bit to get it a little further down. I'm going to get the little screw started on the bottom. There we go. Now I've got it basically together, and I can start with getting this in place. All right. We're going to attempt to get that in place here. All right, the key here is getting this little spring in place. There we go. And then this little pin here has to index inside that little groove on the bottom. And then the pin of the spring has to index on that little groove there. So it just takes a little doing. This is why we leave it just a little bit open. I'm gonna get a little grease on there just to help it stick a little bit into that hole. Just to help the spring stay in place is really my goal here. All right. Now, because I left it a little bit open, we can kind of work this in here and get the spring, get everything aligned. Just takes a little doing. What I'm doing here is trying to get the sometimes a little more challenging to get in there than others. There we go. Just got to get the right angle and tension. Sorry about the background noise, guys, but wanted to get this done. There we go. Now we got it. Now it's tensioned. I'm going to tap that in just a little bit. There it goes. Tap that one a little bit more. Now we can tighten everything up. Get everything tightened down. Not too tough. All right. We are just about there, getting ready to test it. Good. Now it'll close. I'm going to go ahead and tighten up the rest of these. Whoop, that's not the right size. Probably hear our shop dog in the background. That's Thor, 140-pound Rottweiler. Amazing dog. We were just about ready to test the trigger. Sorry it took so long. Don't want to over tighten these, but they do need to be snug. All right, we're in good shape there now. Last but not least, easiest to put this on by resting it on the workbench, slide it into place. You got to make sure that little piece is aligned. It'll go right in. And then all you got to do is pull this out and use the spring tension, and it's back in. Now we will see how we did. There's nothing in there. Trigger works. It's definitely much lighter. Let's see how we did from a trigger pull perspective. Remember, we were just about 6, in some cases just, you know, real high 5 pound, 12 ounces range. We'll see how we did here. Hopefully we're a little bit lighter. There you go. Hopefully you can read that. 4 pounds. We're breaking right at 4 pounds. So we took about 2 pounds out of that trigger. Four 8. That one broke really light. I think I was just a little lower on the trigger. That was about 3 pounds. That's not a bad thing. 310. So there you have it. Now we have a Smith & Wesson FPC trigger job with a Kaw Valley spring kit for an AR-15. I used the hammer spring, took 2 pounds out of the trigger of the FPC. Feel free to comment. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.